Hey guys, Liquid Consecrated here from Team Liquid. Today I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to be reviewing a weapon, specifically the SG-553 from Counter-Strike Global Offensive on the PC. The SG-553 is the terrorist equivalent to the AUG Bullpup. It is a scoped rifle that replaces the Krieg 552 from Counter-Strike Source. Now, in my opinion, after playing with this gun, it's probably one of the better guns for the terrorist side, and it kind of rivals with the AK-47. It ties with the AUG for the highest first shot accuracy in the game, which is really impressive, especially you'll see some pop-offs that I do later on where I get an instant shot. Alright, so let's talk about the weapon spread. So, the thing you'll notice about here is it does go up in a T-shape like most other rifles in the game. It goes up, and then to the right, and then over to the left. Now, if you focus on it, you can control it. The mouse movement that you're going to want to do is kind of hold down for about 2.5 seconds, then hold down to the left for 2.5 seconds or so, and then slightly nudge to the right. And as you'll see here in a second, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and control that. This is to go ahead and reduce the amount of spread that you have, especially if you're in a close location, because the rifle is slow and on its fire rate, and it's very accurate. You want to keep it as tight as possible, and you want to avoid as many close encounters as possible with this gun. So let's talk about some of the weapon characteristics here. The SG-553 is $3,000. That puts it $500 more expensive than an AK-47. However, it's $300 cheaper than the counter-terrorist equivalent, the AUG. This is important because the SG is actually better than the AUG. Besides the AUG having a slightly faster round per minute fire rate, as well as allowing you to move 1 unit faster than the SG beats it out in every way. The SG is 100% armor penetrating, which means you always know the damage you're dealing, while the AUG is not. And the AUG has less damage output than the SG. The SG also reloads 0.8 seconds faster, which means you can get back into the combat quicker. Now let's talk about the AK-47 and the SG differences, because the AK-47 is kind of the mainstay rifle and arguably the best rifle in Counter-Strike Go. But let's talk about the differences here and why I feel the SG is a viable weapon and in fact better in some circumstances. The AK-47 is not 100% armor penetrating. This is important to note because actually, even though it does more damage to unarmored opponents, to armored the SG does win out. It does 119 damage to the head while the AK does 112, 29 to chest and arm, AK 27, stomachs 37, AK 34, and leg 22, and this is the only time where the AK is stronger, 26, and this is on an armored opponent. Now when you're playing casual, this is important because obviously the SG is better. Now when you're playing competitive, there's a little more differences here, especially if you're playing in a tournament, because not everyone's going to be armored all the time, but it's still important to note that the SG is consistent in damage while the AK drops significantly in damage once armor is introduced to gameplay. Now another difference is the movement speed. The SG is actually 5 units faster than moving with an AK-47, which can be the difference in making the kill and losing your opponent. But however, the AK is still better at close range and has better control burst when you're at close range than an SG. So it really comes down to, are you willing to spend the $500 extra to have a ranged weapon? In my opinion, it's not a difference between which weapon is better, but which weapon do you need for the team and the circumstance. Do you need to cover long range alleys and scope down, or do you need to be constantly inside, going outdoors, indoors, and need to be prepared for any encounter? If that's the case, an AK would be better. However, an SG is almost always preferred for long-range battles because you have the scope, which provides high accuracy. So if you're curious about the SG-553, go ahead and pick it up. Go in a deathmatch, learn the recoil pattern, and get used to aiming with it. Learn to use the scope and when not to use the scope, and you'll find a fantastic weapon for a reasonable price, and better than the counter-terrorist equivalent. This means that, yes, both the AK and SG belong in the same round at any given time. It just depends on what your needs are. Once again, this has been a Liquid review from Liquid Consecrated. Thank you and have a good night.